Well, alrighty, we are hot off the heels of Apple's week of Air reveals just a few weeks ago with new iPads, new Mac Studios, and of course the MacBook Airs, which unfortunately are still boring and dreadful colors. I mean, seriously, why don't they match the iMac colors? Those colors are spectacular and completely gorgeous. But I'll have to save that for another video because today I wanted to speculate about the future of Apple this year, specifically with the upcoming releases of the M5 chipset and the future of iMac. Let's go. So to speculate the potential specs of a hypothetical M5, M5 Pro, and M5 Max iMacs, we're gonna analyze the upgrade path so far of the Apple M series chips, focusing on the trends in CPU and GPU core counts, memory configurations, and performance improvements. Apple's M series has followed a consistent pattern of incremental enhancements, balancing power, efficiency, and thermal constraints, especially for the iMac's all-in-one design. Well, since currently in filming this today in March 2025, the M5 series doesn't exist yet, but it is rumored to begin production in 2025 with the base M5 in the first half and the Pro Max variations in the second half of the year. So let's project forward on the M1 to the M4 progression. To start off are the historical trends of the M series chip. Number one, CPU and GPU core counts. All right, starting with the CPU, the M1 had 8 cores, M2 and M3 also had 8 cores, while the M4 bumped it up to 10 cores. For the GPU, the M1 had 7 or 8 cores, and the M2, 3, and 4 all had 10 cores. As for the rest of the Pro and Max variations, M1 Pro 8 and 10 CPU cores, M1 Max is at 10, and this trend continues with the M2 Pro and M2 Max, 10 and 12 cores versus 12 on just the Max. The M3 Pro has 11 and 12 cores, but the M3 Max has 14 CPU cores. Bringing in the GPU, 14 or 16 cores for the Pro, 24 or 32 cores for the M1 Max. Upping that to the next generation, 16 and 19 cores for the Pro, 30 and 38 cores for the M2 Max. And then the M3 Pro does something a little curious. They actually decrease the amount of cores, 14 and 18. However, they are on a new 3 nanometer process, which is a lot more efficient, but maintaining the higher 30 and 40 cores of GPU on the M3 Max. And that brings us to today with the M4. As it stands, has been upgraded to a 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU. Pro has a 12-core CPU and a 20-core GPU, and the Max has a 14-core CPU with a 40-core GPU. With this trend in mind, the base models either maintain or just slightly increase their CPU cores with actually pretty good modest GPU core upgrades, whereas the Pro and Max variants see larger jumps, especially in performance cores and GPU cores, which obviously are tailored for professional workloads. All right, number 2 is unified memory. What used to be called RAM or random access memory, Apple just now calls unified memory because it's all soldered onto the same chip. 8 or 16 gigabytes was standard on M1, whereas M2 added a 24 gigabyte tier, and then M4 made 16 gigabytes standard with an optional 24 gigabytes upgrade. 16 and 32 gigs for the M1 Pro, 32 and 64 gigabytes for the M1 Max, and this remains the same for the M2 Pro and Max, with the Max adding an additional 96 gigabytes. M3 Pro, we up that to 18 and 36 gigabytes, and the M3 Max is just 36 and 96 gigabytes, with 16 gigabytes now being the standard for M4, and the Pro and Max offering just nutty amounts of RAM, a much higher ceiling for professional use. All right, third point to consider is the processing node and their efficiencies. Let's see, M1 and M2 were both 5 nanometer, with the M2 being a refined version. The M3 and the M4 are both 3 nanometer sized processors, which that's just impossibly small. That's just absolutely crazy. Of course, with the M4 being a refined version of the M3. And it is speculated that the M5 is likely also going to be a 3 nanometer node processing technology. I don't really know what I'm saying. I'm just doing my best, guys, okay? I'm just a YouTuber. 2 nanometers might be an option, but it also probably won't be available until later on with the M6 or the M7. So this trend is each generation significantly refines the process boosting the performance per watt about 15 to 25% each generation, which is good. That's on the efficiency side of things. Okay, fourth thing to consider are the neural engine and AI processing. So the M1 had a 16-core neural engine with around 11 teraflops of performance. I know teraflops aren't necessarily a great way of measuring, but it's a good definition and even number for common folk like me to understand, for the most part, what the machine is capable of. Fast forward to the M4, which maintains the 16-core neural engine, but tops out at 38 teraflops. So this trend tells us that there is significant leaps in AI performance, especially with Apple Intelligent features driving demand moving forward. The fifth thing to consider is iMac positioning. The iMacs in recent years have been a base model configuration only using the base chips, M1, M3, M4, and not the Pro and the Max variations, due largely to thermal and performance constraints, more of a consumer-focused product, which, okay, that's fine, but However, we did have an iMac Pro at one point in time, and an iMac Pro revival could bring about the use of these beefier chips, which I very much hope Apple does. Please, Tim, keep cooking. All right, so let's let the speculation begin, shall we? My drink and my glasses are matching colors. Lime. These are my speculated M5 iMac specifications. For the M5 iMac base model, we're looking at a CPU of 10 cores, 4 performance cores and 6 efficiency cores, or possibly even a 12-core CPU. The M4 bumped its base CPU to 10 cores, so the M5 might push to 12 cores for a meaningful upgrade, aligning a little bit more with pro-level efficiency cores. On the GPU side of things, I'm gonna guess a 12-core GPU. The M4 stayed at 10 cores, which was a 20% increase, fitting the pattern from the M2 processor's 10 cores versus the M1's 8 cores. For the memory, I think 16 gigabytes is here to stay, and for a while, which I think is a good thing. That's a good move. Although I suspect on the base level, we'll be able to configure it up to 24 or even 32 gigabytes. Apple's shift to 16 gigabytes as a standard with M4 suggests 32 as a potential new ceiling for base iMacs. For storage, I'm thinking 256 gigs, a quarter terabyte will be the standard, but I think for the M level, up to 2 terabytes will definitely be an option. As for the neural engine, up to and even exceeding 50 teraflops of performance, which would be right around a 30% jump from the M4's 38 teraflops, and helping it to align more with its new AI focus. Performance-wise, this would be 20% faster than the M4 CPU and GPU, with better efficiency due to the refined N3P node. For this consumer-focused M5 iMac, it prioritizes efficiency with a modest power boost for everyday tasks, browsing light media, creative work, etc. However, the 24-inch form factor limits cooling, so these specs, I think, will stay somewhat conservative. But this is where it gets fun, okay? So say we have a hypothetical iMac Pro revival with a 27-inch 5K or even a 32-inch 6K monitor. Let's get cooking. I don't know if they would bring back the 27-inch 5K or a 32-inch 6K. Let's just go crazy town banana pants and say it's a 32-inch 6K monitor, all right? Does that work? They're not gonna do like a white one. I think they would do just a black one, but I'd like to see just white and black. That would be great for the Pro line. For the M5 Pro iMac, we're looking at a hypothetical CPU of 14 cores, which is 8 performance cores and 6 efficiency cores. This follows the M4 Pro's 12 cores, adding performance cores to fit the Pro tier's trajectory. The GPU will be a 20-core or a 24-core. The M4 Pro has 20, so obviously maintaining that as a standard is obvious, but a bump up to 24 would mirror the M2 Pro to M3 Pro scaling, 16 to 18 cores. As for the memory, we're looking at 24 gigabytes base, configurable to 32, 48, or even 64 gigabytes. Pro models demand more RAM for multitasking and creative apps like Final Cut Pro. Although, to be fair, I've been using this M1 iMac with Final Cut Pro with all my 4K 60 video. And it's still going pretty well as my 2019 Intel iMac. That's also going pretty strong with Final Cut Pro. But yeah, just the more the better. For storage, we're looking at 512 gigabytes space, or half a terabyte, up to 4 terabytes. Neural engine, we're looking at 60 teraflops. Enhanced AI for professional workflows, for example, machine learning tasks. Performance would be roughly a 25% CPU boost and a 30% GPU boost over the base M5 with server-grade packaging, rumored for the M5 Pro to improve thermals. The M5 Pro's rumored separate CPU-GPU design might allow better heat management on a larger chassis. And that reminds me, like, it is heckin' impressive for the base iMac, the M1, M3, and the M4 iMacs to be just so paper thin, thinner than an iPhone. However, for the most part, like, these aren't mobile devices. We don't need them to be that thin. So these Pro models, they can be a little bit thicker and people will be okay with that because they're just gonna put them down on the desk and they're gonna stay there for 5 to 10 years and people aren't gonna be like, oh, it's slightly thicker, you know, people aren't gonna do that. So make it slightly thicker, let's improve the thermals, let's get the M5 Pro in the iMac. All right, now let's go completely crazy, completely off the rails. M5 Max iMac. Again, we're sticking with the 32-inch 6K design. So a hypothetical high-end iMac Pro variant with the M5 Max chip. I speculate a 16-core CPU with 12 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. The M4 Max has 14 cores, so adding 2 extra cores follows the Max trend, with the M2 Max having 12 cores, the M3 Max having 14 cores. For the GPU, we're looking at a 40-core or 48-core processor. The M4 Max tops at 40, so a 48-core GPU increase would be a significant leap, matching the Mac Studio territory. Memory, I think, would be 36 gigabytes base, configurable up to 96 or even 128 gigabytes of RAM. Wow, I'm just a regular, YouTuber, so I can't imagine me ever needing that, but some people definitely do. It's gonna be crazy. So that's gonna be super useful for those people. This, of course, matches high-end MacBook Pro configurations. As for the storage, we're looking at 1 terabyte base, configurable up to 8 terabytes, which, of course, this just aligns with other Max tier devices. As for the neural engine, we're looking at 70 teraflops of performance, potentially, pushing AI performances further for renderings and simulations. As for the performance, we're looking at a 30 to 40% increase than the M5 Pro, with an emphasis on GPU-intensive tasks such as 3D modeling and 8K video editing. So basically, an M5 Max iMac, try saying that 5 times fast, would be a premium offering. It would compete with the Mac Studio, but in an all-in-one package. A few additional considerations. For the display, the base M5 iMac will absolutely retain the 24-inch 4.5K Retina display. However, I think the M5 Pro and Max could introduce a 27-inch 5K or a 32-inch 6K options, reflecting the old 5K iMac as well as their current 6K 32-inch screen offering, possibly even supporting ProMotion, which is 120 Hz or faster for smoother visuals. As for the ports, the base M5 Mac would absolutely be 4 Thunderbolt 5 ports. The Pro and the Max, we could see maybe 6 Thunderbolt 5s, as well as an SD card slot and HDMI 2.1. As far as the design, I think minimal changes for the base, possibly a color tweaking, but the Pro and the Max will absolutely need to be thicker for better cooling. And we're definitely gonna get like a space gray or a space black or something variant with the return of black bezels. I think it's possible we can see the M5 iMac definitely this year, perhaps later on in the second half of 2025, with the Pro and the Max bigger variations coming later in 2026 if Apple decides to extend the lineup, which I really hope they do. All right, well, it's time to wrap up this theory video. So in a nutshell, the M5 iMac could feature a 12-core CPU, a 12-core GPU, and 16 to 32 gigabytes of RAM, keeping it accessible yet very powerful. An M5 Pro variant with a 14-core CPU, a 24-core GPU, and 24 to 64 gigabytes of RAM, and an M5 Max iMac, 16-core CPU, 48-core GPU, and 36 to 128 gigabytes of RAM. Would cater to pros, hopefully reviving the iMac Pro lineup with larger displays and better cooling. These specs, I think, roughly reflect Apple's patterns of scaling performance while adapting to the iMac's thermal and market constraints. Obviously, exact numbers will hinge on Apple's final M5 designs, which we'll hear about later this year, but this speculation, I believe, fits very well with the M series trajectory as of now, March 2025. But what do you guys think? What are you guys looking forward to with the future of M5 and the future of the iMac? Let me know, and thanks for watching.